right, joining me now to rip through some best bets and discuss all the big games on the college football week 11 board is our guy, Brad Powers. In the second half of the show, we'll be joined by Jake Butt. Before we get into everything, guys, hit that like button and that subscribe button right down there. Brad, how you making out today?
You're doing well. We got a best bet winner midweek action, so excited about that. Wasn't a great game, but that still pays the same. So
Oh,
looking forward
yeah.
to upcoming good slate of games here.
Yeah, shout out Ball State coming through for us. So on Monday's program, Brad gave out Ball State. They cashed for us there on Wednesday night. Also gave out Texas A&M -6. That's up to -6.5 at a lot of spots. I saw a 7 at FanDuel. Does your opinion change much on a 6.5 for that one, Brad?
No, 6.5 still playable. Obviously shop around. Don't bet it at 7 off a key number, but 6.5 still like the Aggies there. Mainly a fade against a Missouri team playing a third string quarterback.
Okay, let's add three more best bets to the docket here. Let's start with the James Madison game that has a total of 55, and you're thinking higher scoring game.
Yeah, we're going over 55 here. Let's talk about James Madison's opponent first. It's Marshall. They have had each of their last 5 games go over the total. Okay, that makes me, interested in the over. Big thing for me is the margin in which they went over. They went over the total in their last 5 games, Marshall, by an average of 22 points per game. Very tough for the market to catch up with a team that's running some pace, and they got a pretty good passing quarterback. On the other side, JMU, this is a team that's got motivation for margin. They're in the mix as far as being possibly in the playoff hunt, as far as the group of 5 champion. They have put up 63 points and 52 points in their last 2 games against 2 really good teams in the Sun Belt, 2 teams that are better than Marshall. They've kept the foot on the pedal in the second half. They'll do it again here. Let's go over 55.
Okay, next up, we got a ranked matchup. Oregon taking on Iowa. Iowa in a bit of a rare spot as a home underdog here. You like Oregon, favored by 6.5.
I do. So let's compare some point spreads here. So already, I mean, we're early November. These 2 teams have 4 common opponents in Big Ten play. So I like looking at, what was the average point spread of those games? Average point spread of those 4 games for Oregon had Oregon favored by 13. Average point spread of those 4 games that Iowa played against the same opponents, pick them. So 13-point difference, factor in the home. You probably should be looking at a line of Oregon -10. Why is it not 10? Well, there could be some weather in there, so some suppression on the scoring, but I still can't get anywhere near why this line shouldn't be above a touchdown. We're laying 6.5 with Oregon. Keep in mind, Indiana was favored by 9 at Iowa, didn't cover, but Oregon was favored by a touchdown over Indiana. So I think this is a really cheap price here when you're comparing lines. With the liquid market, we're not talking about first half team totals here. We're talking about sides. So I think there's some point spread deflation on the Oregon side here. Let's lay 6.5.
Okay, one more best bet to add. You like Eastern Michigan as a 2-point favorite this weekend.
Yeah, I like a spot first for Eastern Michigan. They play 9 straight games, so they're kind of running out of steam there at the end. So, but they are coming off a bye, so I like that. What I don't like is their opponent. It's the Falcons, my alma mater, dealing with a lot of problems. In fact, their last 3 games, they have failed to cover the spread by an average of more than 3 touchdowns per game. What's going on? Well, BG likely is going to be starting a 4th-string quarterback in this game. They've had 3 players arrested after the game last week for assault. Locker room disjointed. They fired the offensive coordinator this week. This is a team that I think is probably play against the rest of the season. So we're going to play against BG, and we're going to lay it here and lay the 2 points with Eastern Michigan.
Good looking spot there. Okay, now let's get into a bunch of leans for some standout games this week before we get into the Saturday action. We have 5 total games on Thursday and Friday. Anything stand out to you there?
Yeah, I like Northwestern. Give me the 14.5 on Friday night. They're at USC. I bet this at this exact number here. I like the spot, believe it or not. And you're like, what? Huh? Northwestern traveling across the country. How can you like it? Northwestern off a bye. It's a Friday night. Well, guess what? USC played last week. They're not off a bye. In fact, they were on the road. So a short week for them after a very physical, emotional game where they had to rally from behind and beat Nebraska. So I like the spot for Northwestern. They're also a tough team to get margin on. Why? They run one of the slowest tempos in college football, number 130 in plays per minute. And they also have one of the better defenses. When you're top 15 in scoring, tough to get margin when you don't give up points. Northwestern plus 14.5 for me.
Okay, let's get into the standout games here on Saturday. Obviously, not the game we thought we'd be getting between Indiana and Penn State. Indiana favored by 14.5, total of 48.5. Penn State season from hell, betting wise as well, 1-7 against the spread. These teams combined to be 12-5 to the over this season. What do you make of this matchup?
I'm going to lean, believe it or not, with Penn State. I'm going to put the
Ooh.
clothespin on the nose here and take the stinky dog plus the 15. What am I seeing? Finally, I'm seeing some inflation if you want to fade Penn State, and you're also getting some point spread premium if you're wanting to bet Indiana. Keep in mind, this line in the summer, I know a lot's changed, had Penn State favored by 15. So, in a huge swing here. And keep in mind, the market hasn't totally thrown Penn State in the trash. They were just a 17.5 point underdog at Ohio State last week, and now they're a 15-point home underdog to Indiana. Something's not adding up here. I'll take Penn State, who I don't think has quit on the season. They're only down by 3 at halftime against the Buckeyes. Let's lean with Penn State here.
Okay, next up we have a good looking ranked matchup. BYU taking on Texas Tech, favored by 10, total 52.5. So BYU remains undefeated, and they've been a fantastic bet as an underdog here. 8-1 against the spread as a dog going back to 2023. 6 outright wins. Do you give them much of a shot here?
I mean, I respect them, but there's a reason why this is a double-digit point
Yeah.
spread here. I actually like the favorite and bet the favorite this week. So I like Texas Tech minus the 10. Let's talk about BYU. Very fortunate to be undefeated. They won a game they probably shouldn't have won in double overtime against Arizona 3 games ago. 2 games ago, they get outgained by 100 yards against Utah. They pull the outright upset there. And then they get outgained by 80 plus yards against Iowa State in their last game, but benefited from a +4 turnover margin. And they're not getting +3 or 4 turnovers here. I don't think they're staying with a Texas Tech team that I think is underrated, believe it or not, because they played 3 games this season without their starting quarterback, including their only loss of the season. So I like Tech here in their biggest home game in 2 decades.
Okay, next up, Ohio State, an absolute wagon, not just outright from a betting perspective as well. Since losing to Michigan last season, they are 11-0-1 against the spread. They've covered a lot of big spreads in that stretch 24.5, 23.5, a 54.5. They're favored by 29.5 against Purdue, total of 48.5. Can Ohio State keep it going against the spread here?
I think so. So we're
Ooh.
leaning Ohio State minus the points here. I haven't bet it. I'm just not built to be laying, the 4 touchdowns. It's not only a play on Ohio State team that continues to be undervalued in the market. No, look no further than that 12-game ATS cover stretch for them. But it's also a Purdue team that only lost by 5 against Michigan. But how many times can a program like Purdue keep picking itself up off the mat and give you an A+ effort? You got it last week from them. I also like the fact what I saw from Ohio State in last week's second half against Penn State. They really put a foot to the pedal in the second half of that game. I think they'll keep the foot on the pedal here. There's no look ahead. They're not playing Michigan next week. There's no Indiana on the schedule. So you'll get a pretty good effort out of Ohio State, and that'll be enough to cover this big spread.
Okay, next up, game of note here. Auburn taking on Vanderbilt, who's favored by 6.5, total 45.5. So Vandy lost to Texas last time out. Now, after their previous loss before that against Alabama, they did bounce back nicely. They beat LSU by 7. Do you think they can bounce back again?
I do, and I bet Vanderbilt. Keep in mind, Auburn fired their coach. You would think, hey,
Yes.
that's a negative. It hasn't been though this year. So first game with an interim coach, we've already had 9 firings so far already this season. That team coming out with the interim coach game 1 7-2 against the numbers. So let's bypass that as far as the side. Let's go with the total here. What am I seeing? Well, I'm going to go over the total. I think Vanderbilt's getting a little tired defensively. We saw it in the Texas game. But there's no quit, obviously, with them offensively. They scored 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter to get the back door against the Longhorns. Mainly why I'm betting over here is I like what I'm hearing out of Auburn. You're not going to believe this, Joe, but Auburn this year had 3 different play callers for every down, first,
Wow.
second, third down. They got one play
What?
caller.
Okay.
They have one play caller for this week's game. That'll be it. It'll be addition by subtraction, firing the head coach free. So I expect a bump in Auburn's offense.
God, you got to wonder who's making the decisions for some of these teams, right? That is in 3. That's insane. I've never heard anything like that. Okay, LSU playing their first game since firing Brian Kelly. They're in prime time at Alabama. Alabama favored by 10 points, total 49.5. Now, Bama has owned them in recent season. They smashed them by 29 last season, by 14 the season before that. Do you think they'll smash them again on Saturday night?
I don't. And
Ooh.
Alabama has, quite frankly, hasn't been smashing teams. I know they've won 7 straight since the opening loss against Florida State, and I, took my preseason national champ and said, "Nah, I'm done with them." And even though they've won 7 in a row, I'm not back on the wagon. Why? Every single one of the final scoreboards is better than the box score. In fact, Alabama's been outgained in each of their last 3 games. So I don't want to lay double digits here against an LSU team. Like I mentioned with Auburn, I think it's addition by subtraction. Getting Brian Kelly out of that locker room, who was never a good fit, will be a bonus, at least for one game, in my opinion, for LSU. I expect them to play their best game this season. I'm leaning LSU plus the 10 here. And I think they'll open up the offense a little bit. And I'll mention the stat again. For game one with an interim coach this year, 7-2 against the number. You get
Ooh,
that 1 game
there you
interim
go.
bump with these teams.
New coach bump. Okay, let's wrap things up with Navy taking on Notre Dame, the Fighting Irish, a big favorite in this one, 26.5 total, 56.5. Notre Dame has covered in 5 of the last 6 in this matchup. This is the biggest underdog Navy has been all season. Can Navy avoid getting just completely obliterated? I guess this is a big number.
Yeah, it is a big number. I like Navy here. This would be best bet material, but I don't think this number is done from rising because if you've been paying attention, Notre Dame point spreads, they usually get bet on late in the week. I don't think it's public money either, laying the points. There's some groups out there really like this Notre Dame team and have them valued as a top 5 team in the country. So why am I taking Navy here, especially after their first loss this season, the first real opponent they played? I just think with a number this big, obviously you're dealing with limited possessions when you're running the option, and it's tough to get margin. It's also tough to get margin with Notre Dame's offense, number 125 in the country in red zone scoring. So they're not finishing off drives. And if you have limited drives and you're not finishing off drives with touchdowns, that's not a good look to hear be laying nearly 4 touchdowns. On top of it, looks like there's going to be some wind and rain. Tough to get margin with bad weather, in my opinion. So Navy plus 26.5 for me. If it climbs a little further, it's best bet material.
Okay, there you have it. Best bets and leans for all the top games from Brad. Brad, as always, thank you very much for joining. Best of luck with all those bets. Enjoy the games, and we'll look forward to talking to you again on Monday.
Thanks again for having me.
All right, joining me now to get into some of the biggest games of the week and some of the biggest storylines in college football and the NFL as well is our guy, former Michigan Wolverine and Denver Bronco, current analyst at the Big Ten Network, Jake Butt. Jake, how are we doing today?
Couldn't be better, Joe. It's November. It's championship season. The leaves are changing, starting to fall off. It's chilly outside. Every week when I'm calling an Ohio State game this weekend, and our like open going into the game is like fully college football playoff Heisman talk. Like everything, kind of the temperature on the season gets turned up a little bit. And as a guy that's been a part of teams making these runs, it's just that much more fun to cover these games.
Hell yeah, it's that time of year. The stretch run of the regular season is here, and it is the point of the season where we really start to pay attention to those rankings. So, the latest edition of the rankings are obviously out. What is your opinion? What would you change? And which team do you think could have a late season surge to potentially get into that top 12?
Look, I loved and I've really enjoyed ripping on the AP in their rankings this year. It's been an absolute joke. In the past, I've loved ripping on the CFP rankings. I love talking on Twitter, formerly Twitter X.
Yes.
This committee nailed these rankings. Like when they came out, I had a show at Big Ten Network that night, and I was asked by 3 separate people, like, "Hey, like, what's your biggest surprise? What's your biggest takeaway?" And I kept scanning it, like second guessing myself. I'm like, I have no issue with any ranking here at all. Like, I can absolutely see the logic. If Indiana was ranked number 1, I would have been okay with that. But Ohio State is. I'm perfectly okay with that. Of course, USC should be ranked above Michigan. We all saw them beat them. Of course, Michigan should be ranked above Washington. We saw that win happen. And Iowa should be ranked. Like like the resume speaks for itself. The AP didn't have them ranked. I guess the only thing is a few things that have stood out here. Oregon being ranked number 9 at 7-1. I think the committee is kind of communicating to us that they're uncertain about where the Ducks are. Remember, that was a great win on the road against Penn State. I still think they should be given credit because they effectively broke Penn State. Like the Penn State team we see today is different than the Penn State team we saw them play against. But okay, 9 and they're win and get in. That's all it is for a lot of these teams. And then Notre Dame at 10, they're 6-2, but they're ranked ahead of both Texas and Oklahoma. Texas and Oklahoma both with 2 losses, both at 7-2. I think both Texas and Oklahoma have stronger wins and better resumes and are maybe more deserving, especially Texas. Like, one of your losses is week 1 on the road against Ohio State. Like, we know Notre Dame's losses as well, but I think you could make a case that Texas and Oklahoma could be ranked above them.
What about a team that you think could pop into that top 12 there? These things are far from set in stone. We've seen the bracket and how the teams would match up today. Anyone you think that could make a bit of a late season surge here?
Yeah, well, I'll just take a second here to kind of lay it out. Remember that a G5's team still is guaranteed to make the playoffs. So
Yes.
there is a current unranked team right now that is going to bump out. Like,
Yeah.
unfortunately, the worst place you can be in this scenario, neither Texas or Oklahoma would get in, even though they're ranked number 11 and 12. We got to make room for a G5 team. I think they're going to change that eventually. Boise
Yes.
State, remember, they were in the top 12 last year, but I think they're going to change that. ACC champion is going to make it. Like, there's an ACC champion that is going to make it. There's no ACC teams there in the top 12. And then, if you're asking me the way it lays out, Michigan and Washington are Michigan 7-2. Washington is 6-2. You look at both their schedules, and Michigan should be favored leading into an Ohio State game. They won't be favored against Ohio State, but they will be favored to be 9-2, hosting Ohio State at home. We know they've won 4 straight. If they beat Ohio State, they'd be 10-2. Maybe go to the Big Ten championship. They would be in. The same would be true for Washington, though. They're with 2 losses. They are rolling. They are healthy. They'll be favored to be 9-2, hosting Oregon in Husky Stadium. They own Oregon at home. So if Washington wins, I think they would get in. So there's number 21 and number 23 favored to remain with 2 losses, where they will then host their rival, both teams at home, in a win and get in scenario. So I think some of these, that's the best thing about it, Joe, is like looking at 20 through 25. There's a scenario, maybe not Tennessee with 3 losses, but there's a scenario where these 2-loss teams could make a run and get into the 12-team playoff.
Okay, a month ago, we would have thought that the Miami Hurricanes would have been a shoo-in to get into that 12-team playoff, but they are collapsing here, Jake. They've lost 2 of their last 3. Both of those losses came as a double-digit favorite. Carson Beck has become an interception machine in those games, 6 total INTs in those 2 losses. They're now ranked 18th, 5-1 just to get into the playoff. Are you surprised by this collapse from Miami?
Well, a month ago, we would have been shocked to say what we're saying about Miami. But 2 months ago, and this is why you watch this show, you asked me my opinion if I was the GM of Carson Beck, and I said I would fire everyone if they drafted him in the first round. And frankly, this is exactly why. As a quarterback, especially a veteran quarterback, there has to, at a certain point, there has to be like a switch that gets flipped, like a level of maturity to understand the situation, understand the context, not of just the play or the game, but the season as a whole. You simply cannot put the ball in harm's way. And Carson Beck has been given ample opportunity to learn from his mistakes. It's just a given at this point. As the season goes on, in big moments, Carson Beck is going to cost you games with bad decision making. And that's just the reality of Miami's season. He has cost their team, and it's not just him, but certainly those turnovers in big moments cost you the game. So that's the storyline to me. I am not of the belief that I'm just not willing to place my bets on the back that Carson Beck is going to flip the switch back and start playing at a high level without making those big mistakes. So, and as for our viewers, as you're thinking about maybe placing long shot playoff bets, I'm a Michigan guy through and through. I got real concerns about their freshman quarterback, Bryce Underwood. Everything else is in place, but these games, the more competitive, the margin for error becomes so thin. That falls on the back of your quarterbacks. Can they make tough plays when it's not wide open and avoid making the big mistakes? That's probably the most important question for these playoff teams down the stretch.
Yeah, second straight season for Carson Beck where his NFL stock has absolutely just plummeted. So we'll see how he
Yeah.
finishes out. But yeah, not looking good for him or the Hurricanes. Okay, let's get into a couple of the big games of the week. Let's start with number 7 BYU taking on number 8 Texas Tech, who's favored by 10 points. So BYU still undefeated on the season. Texas Tech 8-1. So BYU undefeated. They're a 10-point underdog in this one. Do you think they're being undervalued, or do you think they could get slapped here, considering they haven't faced a whole lot of stiff competition yet this season?
Maybe they're being undervalued. I'm sure the BYU fans feel that that's the case. I mean, you look at their record over the past 2 years, you look at their record in conference the past 2 years, they've been absolutely dominant. And 10 points is a lot, but yet who cares what the spread is if you're BYU? Maybe use it just to your advantage and get your boys pissed off, but win and get in, win and get in, win and get in. That's the message to everybody. And remember here too, it's not the four highest rated conference champions that get a bye. It's the four highest rated teams, period, that get a bye. So you could have 2 or 3 Big Ten teams get a bye, 2 or 3 SEC teams get a bye. BYU right now undefeated. I would imagine if there's one team that's not SEC or Big Ten to get a bye, it would be one of these teams, assuming they win this game, win out, and win their conference championship game. I love this game. How often we talk about the trenches at nauseum on this show. BYU, they are completely dominant in the trenches. 5th in run blocking grade. They have a top 25 overall pass blocking grade. Their O-line just in total is number 7 in overall grade. That's in all of college football. BYU relies on their offensive line. The trenches have taken them home in everything. Texas Tech, though, has the number 1 graded defensive line in all of college football. They have a 97 run defense grade, a 91 pass rush grade. Dominant defensive line players. This is the key. Texas Tech runs a 3-3-5 defense. So it's almost like, man, we should be able to run the ball into a light box. I remember when Michigan played TCU, TCU ran a 3-3-5 defense. You're like, man, there's a lot of light bodies. We should be able to run right through them. The issue becomes of identification is who has who. Who do we count in the box? Who do we leave unblocked? That's the big challenge with 3-3-5 defenses. Can BYU identify the right blockers, protect for their quarterback, and run the ball? On the flip side, Texas Tech's quarterback, Baron Morton, there's 2 versions of him. Again, this comes back to the trenches. When he's kept clean, he has an 88 passing grade. Under pressure, that grade drops to number 50 or a 50 grade overall. So it really just becomes a matter of whether or not these offensive lines can win against 2 great defensive lines. I think the team that control the line of scrimmage in this game will ultimately win it. I just think Texas Tech's defensive line, offensive line, but mainly their defensive line is going to be too dominant and too disruptive. On top of the fact that they're at home, early kickoff, that's where the spread it's kind of put the spread where it is.
Okay, we got another ranked matchup here between Texas A&M taking on Missouri. A&M favored by 6.5 points. They remain undefeated on the season, looking to run the table. They have 5 40-point games so far this season. Do you think they keep rolling?
Yeah, I mean, why not, right? And here's another thing too. A&M undefeated. They're looking to the last undefeated team remaining in the SEC. They're looking to win out and secure a bye. Meanwhile, for Missouri, they are really trying to fight to keep their playoff hopes alive, doing it without Bo Pribula. They're going to be using a backup quarterback, a true freshman. Marcel Reed, the A&M quarterback. This could be a month for a Heisman push. I know Julian Sayin has started to separate, but this is, you start to win games. It's a winning award for quarterbacks as well as it is a stats award. He is best off of play action. So for A&M, can you run the ball on early downs and get into non-obvious passing situations? And let's go to the numbers to look at this. Off of play action, he is the number 17 highest rated quarterback in all of college football off of play action. In true drop back situations, obvious passing situations, that drops to the 105th graded quarterback. So, wow, that is a big difference. Can A&M run the ball and then get into play action? He's been outstanding. Why that also matters, Missouri's defense, grading their passing grade defense when facing play action is 92nd in the FBS. In obvious passing situations, they're the 12th best secondary. So there is the exact world right there. Can A&M avoid obvious passing situations, 3rd and long, 2nd and long, where they can open up their playbook to run the ball or get into play action? It's going to be really, really hard for Missouri to stop them. Missouri is an aggressive downhill defense. They sell out to stop the run. That's where some of the play action comes alive. And of course, it's if they want to win, it's Ahmad Hardy, their running back. going to have a career Heisman type day with a backup quarterback.
Okay, prime time Saturday night, LSU at Alabama. Bama favorite by 10 points. Now, obviously, the game doesn't have as much meaning as it would have, say, a month ago. But, still a lot of talent on the LSU side
No
of the
doubt.
football. How do you expect them to look in their first game since Brian Kelly got canned?
It's one thing. I don't know how if we've talked about it as much, but I'm fascinated in the psychology of this because there's something to it when a head coach gets fired. It becomes much more challenging for Alabama in this instance to prepare for LSU because how could you possibly know what to expect? On top of the fact that LSU suddenly becomes a significantly more dangerous team because they truly have nothing to lose. Go out there and win, run trick plays, go for it on fourth down, do a surprise onside kick, fake a punt, fake a field goal. And what happens is you're now, as for Kalen DeBoer and the Alabama staff, what has become a very confident staff and a staff that's sure of themselves could potentially start to second guess themselves. There's a psychological factor. In 2015, I was at Michigan. We had one loss. We were rolling. We were playing great football. We go on the road to play Minnesota, a game we were heavy favorites in. The Friday before the game, Minnesota's head coach goes down with like a minor heart issue and was having some seizures. So they have an interim head coach for the day. The team played inspired, fresh, trick plays. There's totally something psychological about these games. That being said, I think Ty Simpson has been outstanding. Potential number one overall pick. He's another guy that can win the Heisman, if not will win the Heisman. The key is Blake Baker, LSU. Their defense is predicated on sending pressure. They like to send the blitz at you. Can Alabama pick that up? And then can Ty Simpson, which I would say, yes, he can, throw into pressure? Throw while he's getting hit. He's made some big time throws there throughout the season. And then the flip side for LSU, when they have the football, so much of the season, we're talking about Garrett Nussmeier and what this offensive line is going to be. They have actually been running the ball really well. Over the past month, they've been averaging about 6 yards per carry on the ground. The Tigers have on offense. They just have not given their running game the amount of opportunities. They've been too pass happy. So the question for me is, can LSU continue to maintain that 6 yard per carry mark while having a larger quantity of rushing opportunities? And can Alabama stop them? I just think this season feels like such a step forward for Kalen DeBoer. Alabama's playing just too good. They're looking to win an SEC title and get a bye in the college football playoff.
Okay, Jake, it is now time for your best bet of the week, and we got another big game to get into for this one. Ranked matchup. We have Iowa in a rare spot as a home underdog. They're hosting Oregon, who's favored by 6.5 points, and you like the home dog. Tell us why.
I'll pick them at 6.5. I'd sprinkle in some on the money line. One, it's just, I don't know what it is, but it is. Certain stadiums, LSU at night, for example, right? Historically, that's a place that's really hard to win. Kinnick is a tough place to win. Like, I knew this as a player. Kinnick, Iowa's home stadium, is where college football playoff hopes go to die. In 2016, my Michigan Wolverines, we were undefeated, ranked number 2 in the country, going on the road night game at Kinnick. Heavy favorites, and they beat us by a field goal. I've seen them beat Ohio State. I've seen them win games they have no business winning, and yet this team this year, they have business winning. This is a game that's going to be decided once again at the line of scrimmage. Iowa has one of the more dominant run blocking offensive lines. Their running game's always going to be successful, but Mark Gronowski, their quarterback, gives them layers. It's the quarterback keeper that becomes hard to stop, and then he's not a Ty Simpson or Julian Sayin, but finally Iowa has a quarterback that can complete a forward pass. They're multidimensional. Factor in the special teams. Iowa has one of the best special teams in all of college football. And then, of course, Phil Parker, their defensive coordinator, has been one of, if not the most steady and best defensive coordinators in all of college football. Go back to the Indiana game. Dante Moore, when Oregon was at home playing Indiana, struggled against simulated pressure, zone coverage. It's all up here. There's no quarterback I'd rather have in college football than Dante Moore when it was an obvious one-on-one situation. He throws a beautiful ball, a back shoulder fade with accuracy. But in these games against teams that play a ton of zone coverage, it becomes about identification, knowing, throwing into zones and spots and leading your receivers. And I'm not as confident in Dante doing that. Factor in, it is going to be a rainy, sleety, cold. I mean, Autzen is no stranger to that weather, but I think that favors the home team. And I just love the Hawkeyes to cover this, if not win.
Hell yeah. Okay. Let's mix in a big picture NFL question for you. I like to give you one each week. We're at the midpoint of the regular season. So, who is your NFL MVP at the midway point? Josh Allen has separated himself in the odds. He's at plus 150, trailed by May, Mahomes, and Stafford. Then a big gap between everyone else. Who you got?
It's going to be Mahomes or Allen at this point.
Yeah.
It's got to be one of those two guys. And I would almost say narratives play a major factor in this. It's kind of like the Heisman. It's one of those things that it shouldn't factor in, but it absolutely certainly factors in. Josh Allen's rolling, the Bills are rolling, but I got a feeling that Kansas City is going to continue to grow and progress. And I just I can see a December stretch where the Chiefs get hot and Mahomes is playing some of his best football of his career, where they give another MVP to Patrick Mahomes. It's one of those two guys. Pick your poison. I just lean towards Patrick Mahomes, especially with them getting healthy at the pass catching position and Travis Kelce starting to play good football again. I think I would lean towards Mahomes at this point.
Okay, let's wrap with what might be a stupid question based on a stupid thought that I had. I have a lot of them. I want to throw this at you as a former player, a guy who's been on the field. Could the average guy, me for example, I stand 6 feet tall, 180 pounds. I do take creatine. I peaked as an athlete in my mid teens, probably. Could the average guy play an entire NFL game on kickoff and kickoff return under the assumption that he's trying his hardest and not get seriously injured?
we might have to double your dose of creatine, add in maybe a third or fourth dose of creatine, some extra protein. Important to note the kickoff rules change, because when you asked this question, I thought back to when I was playing about kickoff coverage and KOR, and I had like nightmares last night sleeping about it. It absolutely sucked when it was just 42 guys running 40 yards, 40-yard dashes at one another. But now, okay, like it's a little bit safer. It's still just such a dangerous play. I mean, and the other factor is, Jim Harbaugh had a great quote. At Michigan, he said, the biggest difference between college and the NFL, he said, it's kickoff coverage and kickoff return. And he said, why? He said, you can hear the people in the NFL, they're running down on coverage like their lives depend on it, because their livelihood literally depends on it. No star players are playing on kickoff coverage or kickoff return. It's all those guys in the roster spots 40 and beyond, playing with pure desperation. It is dangerous. There's bodies flying around, legs whipping around. What do you think would be my question? What do you think in the current kickoff rules? How do you envision it going?
Under the assumption that I have to try my hardest, I'd probably end up in the hospital. If it's a
Yeah.
situation where, like, you can kind of duck out and not even try, yeah, you could probably avoid getting hurt. But yeah, I think I would get lit up, especially if you assume the other team knows the situation, that we got a smaller guy over there who
Yes.
hasn't played football since high school. Yeah, I'm getting lit up. Somebody's going to look to make a statement, and they're probably stopping the game and taking me out on a stretcher, is what I
Yeah.
would assume.
Matt, that's probably fair. Like, if you could maybe block and then lay down, but you're not allowed to do that. The Seahawks, remember a few weeks ago, the Seahawks put 2 defensive linemen in on kickoff coverage. So you're just going to have a 300-pounder that still runs a 4.7. Like, no one wants that. Like, I'm going to get injured doing that. So, I love you, Joe. Double up the creatine, and we'll check in maybe in December. We'll see if you could put on some extra mass, get the neck to 19, 20 inches. Then we can revisit it.
There we go. Okay, Jake, we'll leave it at that for today. Thanks as always for joining. Enjoy all the games. Best of luck with that bet, and we'll catch up with you again next week.
All right, Joe. Thanks.